I rise today to join the chorus of voices from our caucus who have tonight spoken to the value, to the importance of transparency in elections. Transparency, as we all know, is critical for free and fair elections, for democracy to function, because the people of this country, the voters, the constituents, those whom we serve and those who hire and fire, all who serve them at federal and state and local offices, need to know who they really represent, who is funding their campaigns, what goals they'll pursue in office, and whether or not the ends really serve their interests. For most of our modern political history, voters at least knew who the ads were coming from, the candidates and the parties that supported them, and could make judgments accordingly. If you thought an ad was too nasty, you could vote against the candidate who ran it. That's the whole point, Mr. President, of forcing us as candidates to own our ads, to say, I'm Chris Coons, and I approved this ad. We all know, as candidates who stood before our electorate, how it feels to put your personal name, your face, to an ad that might be hitting just a little too hard, and that pulls us back from sometimes overreaching. But what we're here to talk about tonight is the whole new world that's been unleashed by a Supreme Court decision. In my view, the basic right of every American to free and fair elections has been compromised by a new flood of tens of hundreds of millions of dollars from wealthy individuals, from corporations, from shadowy national special interest groups that, since the Supreme Court with Citizens United opened these floodgates to unlimited secret campaign activities, threaten to overwhelm the fundamental trust of our constituents and the transparency so essential to our democracy. We voted on the Disclose Act earlier tonight, but my colleagues across the aisle lined up in lockstep against it. Sadly, every member of the other party voted against it. What is so wrong, Mr. President, with voters having information about who is trying to influence their vote? Why is this basic information so important to hide from the American people? Public disclosure of campaign contributions and spending should be expedited, should be swift, should be available, so voters can judge for themselves what is appropriate. I couldn't agree more. I agreed when the esteemed Republican leader said those exact words in 1997, and I agree with him today. Disclosure, he said, is the best disinfectant. Earlier today, I had the honor of presiding, as you do now, Mr. President, and I got to listen to the Republican Majority Leader speak against disclosure. There are many other issues to which we can and should turn. There's many other important issues before our country, and he raised them all in turn. But the thing I had the hardest time with was his leading the other caucus, one after the other, to speak against, to vote against disclosure, something that he himself, the Republican leader, spoke so forcefully in favor of as recently as 1997. Disclosure is the best disinfectant. Back then, the talking points for the other caucus were, spend all you want. There should be no limits on campaign contributions as long as there's disclosure. Disclosure will keep things open and fair. Sadly, today, even that small measure of rationality has been openly abandoned. Mr. President, the unfortunate reality is we're not going to be able to amend the Constitution to repeal the Citizens United decision this year. I wish we could, but it's not going to happen on that timeline. As we saw earlier today, this Senate is apparently not even willing to require the slightest bit of transparency and accountability by passing the Disclose Act as we should. Maybe we'll get the votes tomorrow. Maybe after listening to this tonight, after hearing from us, our constituents will be moved to contact other members of this body. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned, Mr. President, that the Congress is not going to be able to stem the massive influx of cash into our elections this year or this cycle. It may, in fact, be too late for that. There's a reason campaigns and super PACs fund these negative ads. They work. They're designed to go around your head and target your heart. They move you to vote on what you're afraid of, not what you aspire to. And they can be so highly effective. I don't like negative ads. You don't like negative ads. Our citizens and our constituents don't like negative ads. We still have a choice, though. We may not yet be able to amend the Constitution. We may not be able to persuade the other side to pass the Disclose Act this time. But we can allow ourselves instead to say, we won't listen to these craven, destructive ads. We can change the channel. We can ignore the ads. We can learn about candidates and their records. We can vote from a place of power instead of fear. Each and every one of us, each and every citizen, can be more powerful than the Supreme Court, can be more powerful than the billionaires and corporations who are trying to sway their votes by deciding to be better with our politics, by deciding to listen past the smear campaigns and the negative attacks. It is my hope, Mr. President, that we will be able someday to pass the Disclose Act and to amend the Constitution. But until then, I am left with this, with the encouragement of my colleagues, with confidence in our citizens, and with optimism that somehow through this smear campaign of super PAC ads, the truth of the American system will still be shown to the world.